In this section of this course, we will learn the concepts of data in Oracle Process Automation. Now, coming to the concept of data or managing the data in process automation is very crucial or important thing, that is to carry out any of the process or decisions within our process application. First and the foremost thing is, in order to store the data, we should be having some variables which can be acting as a container for the data. So we have to create and design term the variables. So those variables in process automations are known as data objects. Now if you just click on this, that is this icon, data icon, it will open up this drawer, and here you will see process data input and the output. So in the input, we will see what and all arguments we have in the input for this process automation. So in our case, we are starting this process automation with the help of form, and in the form, we might have defined one argument, that is the name. Let me show you this start form over here. Let me open this initiator web form, click on this edit. If you see over here in our web form, we are having one argument or one attribute, that is to accept the name. So the same is visible over here in the data objects, that is under the input. So if you are having any output, suppose if you have built our process automation which will accept the request and return the response, so that will come if you are starting this process with the help of this message start event, that is over here, message start. Suppose if you are going with the message start event, so at the time of recording this class, we are unable to create multiple start points for our process automation. Like in Gen 2, we could be starting a process instance either with web form or with the message start, but that feature is not yet available in the process automation. But by the time you might watch this class, that feature might come. So one of the option is we can toggle this with the help of message start like this. Suppose if you want to start it with a message, then you can define what and all arguments you are accepting over here, that you can define. In most of the cases, this web form is more than sufficient for us. We can start this process automation instance or create the instance of this process application with the help of REST API. Even we configure it with the start with the form. Coming to the other events, we will touch upon later in our course. Now let's come back to our topic, that is the data objects. Suppose if you want to hold the value at runtime in some variable, like suppose if you see any of the activities over here, we will be having data association. Now let me just click on data association. If you closely observe, this data association is associated with a connector, as we had studied in our earlier class, how we have called the REST API with the help of connector. So that API is accepting a name, but in order to pass the name, we should be having a variable which holds this data. So this data is by default stored in initiator argument, which process automation creates when we create a start with web form action. That is a starting point with the web form, as I had shown. So this is having a name variable with the help of which it can pass. So this initiator argument is nothing but it is the data object, and which is having this name. What user has entered, it will be stored over here and it will be passed to the variable what is accepted in the REST API. Now coming to the human task, if I just open the data association, human task also will be having a associated web form in order to show the details to the user. Now that web form is also accepting few of the parameters as we have configured in it. Like here if you see this input parameter, if you see over here on the input data association, this human task action is associated with the web form which is having one argument to show the detail on the web form, that is the output. Now if you closely observe, this output we are deriving from the response from our API, that is over here. So we have created this data object, that is get countries data object, to hold the output from our REST API, which will be holding the details for all the information for a specific country. We are just getting the official name of the country and mapping it over here. So again, holding the data over here is possible by creating a placeholders, which are nothing but called as variables. Like in any other programming language, we will be creating a variable that is to hold the data and pass the information or do the data association and data mapping for the activities in the application. Now, the simple data objects or the variables we can create by clicking on this plus and giving the name. Suppose if you want to store the first name of the user, we can just tell v first name like this, and we can tell simple data type. If you click on this, if the variable is of type string or the text, we can select string. If it is a number, suppose if you want to accept the credit card number of a user, then you can go for the number. If you want to just accept true or false, you can go for the boolean, date, time, so and so forth thing. You can make out the data what we can store on those kind of simple data types by looking at their names. So for this demonstration, we will just keep string and click on create. Similarly, if you want to create a placeholder to accept the card number which is of type numbers, so that is we can create like this. Suppose if you want to create some complex type that is based on the resource, like in our case, if you want to create a type or the variable which can accept the information for a web form, like we can tell initiator web form, then what we can do is we can find the appropriate web form with the help of this name. Suppose I'm creating two web forms with the name initiator and approver, it will be visible over here. Suppose if you have created any type at the application level, it will come over here, as we had created that get countries detail type over here, which is a business type. It is visible over here. We will learn how to create the business type shortly. If you want to consume or create a process or the data object at runtime based on the response of the get countries, then it is visible over here. We can select this and click on create. So what it will do is it will create the type based on the response of the API. No need to create a specific type at the application level, then consume over here. If you are having a connector over here, you can straight away make a type based out of that response. Suppose if you want to create a web form based type, then you can select the appropriate form, and what parameters are there in the web form, it will be visible over here. Only name is there in our initiator web form, it is visible over here. So once we create this data object, then we can go for the data association, like we have created our data object to hold the initiator web form data. Then what we can do is we can open that specific activity which can return us this data type. So in our case, we have created this initiator web form. We can just drag and drop it like this. Here, what we can do is we can see in the input, we are having this initiator type. The type is visible over here. If you see, this is of type initiator, and also the input is also type of initiator web form. So it should match what you see over here. Then only we can be able to map. Otherwise, you will be getting here invalid association. So you can just clear this and click on apply. So like this, we can create the variables or the data types and associate with their appropriate activities using the data association. So in our course so far, we were working on these business objects or the data objects, and we were mapping the data with the help of this data association, but we never dive deep into learning the concepts about managing the data in process automation.